basically like what I'm trying to do with this is tell a little bit about just people who are like doing stuff the right way, and who have actually done it and are still involved in it, and kind of like touch on what that mentality looks like from people who are savages. Okay. So that these kids know, because I just feel like right now, like, you know, there's so much junk out there that these kids are seeing, and they're not really getting like the straight goods. So,
you know what? You know what I'd love, and someday we'll do it. I'd love to just get on a podcast and really tell how I feel.
But would he produce?
Okay. He knew the plays inside and out. So like a lot of times, if you were on the wing, there'd be that 3-man action. So Thiago Splitter would have the ball on the post. Miroslav Teletovic it'd be first, so he'd be the reverse man. So then he'd go down and get the screen. But if Igor was in the middle, that guy always have to cut through. But he had an option. If he could go down and screen, and that guy'd loop over and he'd get the shot. Well, he'd always, if he was the middle, he'd never cut through. He'd always loop down, so he'd come up for the shot. So he knew the system inside and out. Guy almost averaged 20 in EuroLeague, right? He could go.
He was a 4-man?
No, Igor Rakocevic. You remember the shooter with the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Rakocevic.
The Serbian, tight fade, big nose.
Yeah, no shit. He's Serbian with a name called Rakocevic.
Exactly. So yeah, look him up. He was buckets. He played in the league for like 3-4 years. Then
who was the best player that you played against in Europe?
Probably Luka.
How old is he?
Luka at that time was 18.
Wow.
17, 18. He was, I could see that he was good. Navarro was a rock star, but then to make it even worse, Navarro would get all the calls because he was Spanish, but trying to guard that guy was tough. He was taking one-legged threes left and right. So he was really tough to guard. But defensively, I could do whatever I wanted to. Offensively, I could do the same to him, whatever I wanted.
Defensively, you could do whatever you wanted?
Defense. Yeah, right. Shoot it. Hey, when you finally saw me, I wasn't a big defensive guy, but I wasn't getting cooked either now. Come on. But when I was young, I was always a good defensive player because I was athletic, right? But when you score so much, most people, like, nobody looks at Kobe like, oh, he was defensive, or Jordan. Jordan was one of the greatest all-time defensive players ever. But do people talk about Jordan's defense? Not very often. Only the real hoopers do. Not very often, though, because he's straight buckets.
It's funny how Kobe didn't really get his shine as a defender, especially late. I mean, obviously, when you're playing that many minutes, like you can't really defend anymore because your body is broken when you're playing that many games. But yeah, no doubt, like the best dudes for sure. That's one thing that I always tell these kids too when I'm like working with them. I'm like, yo, you want to work on your 9-dribble step backs, but like in order to get into the game as a freshman in college or going from the 9th grade to varsity, like you have to be able to defend. Half the game is spent at the defensive end. So if you can't defend one position up, one position down, you don't stand a chance. It doesn't matter how many points you score because, as a coach, you look at your net impact on the game. But it's so neglected. It's funny.
Defense too. I feel a lot of it is just effort. Because if you're athletic, okay, if you're a slow white guy, okay, you're already messed up. But if you're smart enough to understand the rotations and always get the weak side rebounds, people just see, okay, lockdown. But what about that guy that's always in the right help division? What about the guy that gets 5-6 rebounds a game? What about the guy that's always there in help position? Like, coaches love that. So either you're that guy or you're super athletic and you're everywhere, but then it becomes effort. People don't want to use that effort, but then it comes back to where they are now, in the sense that no one's really in shape because they think they're in shape, but they have no idea. You got to be able to play defense for 40 minutes. You got to be able to play offense for 40 minutes.
Yeah, not just like play defense, like attack the offensive player on defense. No doubt. No doubt. What was I going to say there? Oh, you're just talking about effort. Like when I think about effort too defensively, I think one of the biggest things that's missing is people talk about effort in terms of like your physical capabilities. Like so much at the next level is scouting and is like looking at tendencies and stuff, right? And that's just as much effort as anything else, because even if you don't have the physical capabilities, like think about you and St. John's at the end. Like you couldn't defend those guys one-on-one on an island, but as long as you knew what they were going to do and you played the percentages because you worked early, and you not only just working early in the possession physically to be in an advantageous position, but like really understanding the scout. That's one thing that I always appreciated with you. Cause like, I mean, I'm coming in as a young coach. You don't have to listen to me, but like you bought into the scouting report more than anyone else. And I found that, that helped our team for sure.
And how often did you come in before the game? So I'm there 3 hours before, I get all my shots in. The next 2 hours before, I'm stretching and studying that scout. And when I get out there, I go out then and I watch those guys warm up. And then like how many times during the game, I'm like, hey, Dougie, which way will I send them? Those little things at that point in my career gave me that advantage. So now I'm not getting cooked. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no doubt.
But I think that's what I just had. Karana's out here again. You know, he married a Newfoundland girl. So,
yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, so I brought him on now, and he's working stuff with my camps and stuff with me. So we're going over just the whole concept of how things are, and I just don't feel people understand that if I'm with Doug Plum or I'm with who's the best trainer, Brinkley, or who do they say is the best trainers out there right now?
Chris Brickley, Drew Hanlon.
Okay, I'm with one of those guys 6 days a week, 6 hours. You tell me if that's enough for me to make it as a professional player or to get a Division I college scholarship? Not even close.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? I always look at it as, and that's the thing, everybody will go out there and do their things when people are around and the cameras are on and all the coaches are there. But what are you doing when no one's around?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How are you getting better? What did you do today? Like Ladio just went by there then. Like, what's he going to do now in the next 4 hours before practice?
No question.
You know
no
question. I know what I would have done. You know what I mean? But then I know now what the kids are doing now, and it's not the same. So I practice, believe it or not, I practice from grade 6 to grade 11 before I left. We had practice on Thursday evenings. So our high school coach, gym teacher, he had a commute. So he commuted in about 45, 50 minutes every day. So we'd only practice on Thursdays after school. So that's all I practiced my whole career to that point. So we had Thursdays. But every morning when the bus, I was shooting before the bus came. Every lunchtime, every recess we played, every lunchtime that we could get to gym, we played for 50 minutes, go back to classes, soaking with sweat, right? And then before the bus came, I get some shots up. Then I go home and play every evening. So I always ask the kids now when they say, oh, I was at the therapist. Jeez, must have been 6 months ago. And the kid was there and the therapist obviously knew me. And he said, tell Carl what you've been doing. And this was actually a couple of years ago when I was getting in shape back with the age. And the guy said, oh, I've had a busy week, man. He said, I've got up 400 shots. I said, oh, today? He's like, no, that's been all week. I said, okay, that's good. Good for you. And he said, is that a lot? And he was like really proud of himself. And I said, well, it depends. I said, do you want to be a shooter? He goes, yeah, I'd love to be a shooter, just like you. I said, well, I got up 600 just before I came here. I'm going to get up another 500 now when I leave here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Said,
no, it's hilarious.
Right?
It's hilarious. Like it's a full-time job for sure. Like this whole thing with how much this generation is inundated with just media and like everything is always exciting. All day they're on their phone. It's just like you're looking at something that's new, something that's exciting, and their attention span seems to dwindle, right? So it's like if you're not okay with being bored, you're never going to be very good because you have to be able to, like what did you do? What did your workouts look like when you were young?
But look, okay, on 2 points, I'll tell you that one. But tell me how much better you'd be if you had an iPad, and internet. I didn't have internet. I didn't get internet till we went to college. I had my first computer as a freshman in 2001.
Yeah, right? And you got like the VHSs, like the Pistol Pete homework basketball.
VHSs, man. I went to a school in Ontario because they Newfoundland basketball sent out a pamphlet, and Andre Sola was after getting a scholarship. I didn't look at Eastern Commerce. I didn't look at nowhere. I went to that school because he got a scholarship and I wanted to go there. So imagine, like I say to them now, like, I didn't have this. You know how much information is at their fingertips and they don't even use it? I'd be sitting there with that iPad on the highway and I'd be just following that guy and I'd be just doing it all day long. So like for me growing up, I just watched, like I had VHSs of Jordan in the finals and I watched that series. And I'm trying to do all these moves. And then I go see the senior boys team play. And I'd see, and then Steve Nash and him came on for the Olympics. And I watched those in like 96 qualifiers. You know, when CBC put on a game once or twice a summer, right? So we had 2 channels growing up. We had 4 actually, but 3 and 4 were the same as 11 and 12. So I had 2 channels. So you watch what was on and that was it. And you grow up, and I grow up watching and these people, but you limit it. Like I watched Come Fly With Me probably 1,000 times. Like,
Oh, the greatest, the
you
greatest.
know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
had nothing else. And I'm just watching these things and I'm trying to do them. And like I just drove. So when I played on the side of the road, so cars would come, I'd hear the cars and I'd stop. But that was the only flat piece of pavement we had. I had no playgrounds. We had no corner stores. The school was 25, 30 minutes away. So the town only had 50 people. So we built a homemade hoop and I played on side the highway. So I had nothing else to do. So I dribbled when it was, you remember Newfoundland, it's always windy. So the days that weren't windy, I just shooting. Then the days that weren't windy, I was dunking and dribbling, you know, so we'd have the low rim and I'd always be putting the rim up and down. So I'd be trying to dunk on 8, then 9. And I remember one time I busted my head because I was jumping off these milk carts. So I put the milk cart on the road and I was trying to dunk it. And when I jumped, it gave out and I busted up the back of my head. So like, there's all these things that I look at these kids and everybody wants the Instagram fame. Everybody wants, oh, I want to be that guy. Everybody wants to be Mikey Williams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first you got to realize that 90% of Mikey Williams right now is God-given, right? Yeah. Like that's God-given. So I tell them to look at, I saw a great article, the white kid that's on with Boston from Oregon.
Pritchard.
I watched the video on that guy and what he was doing in the hands. Like that to me is epitome of hard work, right? So you take what God give you and now you get to the farthest point possible of what you've been given. And the majority of those guys get there on hard work and dedication. Now, I'm not saying that the most athletic guys, yeah, they got to put in the time, but those guys can take days off because they're so gifted. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, when you walk into the gym and you can freaking in a pair of flippers, you can stand up and do a 360. Well, that's God-given, right? Yeah. No matter if you never done a thing in your life, that's God-given. But now the guy that's 6 foot and he's doing windmills and he done plyometrics for 4 years and box jumps and ankle weights and, you know, you put in your time and your effort, right? So that's what I try to teach. And for me, it was just like, I was just driven to be the best version. There was 2 reasons I feel, and I'm not going to lie to you right now. I feel that I work so hard because basketball made me free. I was dealing with some crazy demons, the loss of my parents, living with my aunt and uncle. I was unhappy at times and just battling with the fact of being away from my brothers and blaming myself. I blame myself for their dead. I blame myself for all these things. But when I got on the basketball court, I was free. And I was like, you know what I mean?
So yeah, it's like therapy. It's like therapy. Like it's not
1,000% it was therapy.
100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now you picture the backdrop on the beautiful days. Remember when I took you out hunting?
Oh yeah.
Right. So right here is the Atlantic Ocean and, you know, there's green everywhere and there's a homemade hoop. Like it's,
I don't think I wanted you to talk about this because I think like even the story of how you built that, like for these people they'll be watching this, that don't know, like when I was out in St. John's, I went with Carl he took me to his hometown, Patrick Skull. How many people live there? 20?
Right now there's probably a 20, if that, 25 on the weekends.
and I shit you not, it was literally, there is a road, there is a little bit of greenery, and then there's a cliff, and then it's rocks in the Atlantic Ocean. And that is it. And there's 20 people. It was crazy. I've obviously, like when we got there, that hoop wasn't there anymore, but you told me about how it was built. So just like touch on that before we get back to what you're talking about, because this story is incredible. I want people talk about like what it says behind me. There's always a way. So I thought that this is really interesting.
I think this is what defies me with everything. And the whole part of this story is what makes the story for me. But I was living with my aunt and uncle, and again, I wanted to play hoops on the side of the road. So we had a hoop up in the yard, but we had no pavement. So it was all rocky. So like you dribble on rocks and the ball's going everywhere. So I finally convinced my aunt that I was going to build a homemade hoop. So didn't have any money. It's not like, okay, I'm going over to Walmart or I'm going to Canadian Tire and I'm going to buy a hoop. No, that wasn't even an option. Like I get a basketball for my birthday. It'd be I got a $15 Detroit Pistons, you know, the red and blue one. This is February 2nd. By April, the tread is coming out through it. So you got to understand. So I'm trying to paint the picture. So anyway, we went to the sawmill. Again, we didn't buy the lumber. So we went to the sawmill, got the 2 long posts cut. We had the other things there, some bolts and nails. I used the fish twine for the backdrop here. I literally went and stole the stop sign out on the road so that my rim that I got from my high school coach could bolt onto it. From there, hold on.
So wait, you had the
Okay, it's going wild. No, so I'll tell you, she'll stop crying because she'll get down in my arms. And then
so you had the stop sign on the back of the backboard so that there was something to stick to.
So I got a sheet of plywood, painted that, but then I got a hoop so we done the gym in the school. So he had an extra hoop there. So he gave me the hoop. So then I knew it wouldn't be strong enough for dunking with just the plywood. So I literally, I'm looking around like someone's going to catch me now, but I literally went and stole the stop sign and nailed that to the wood first, and then put the rim in through the stop sign and bolted it all together to make, so there's 2 pieces of plywood and then the steel from that. So we, that was the start of it. So then that was the main hoop. One morning we heard a bang at about 6:30. My aunt starts screaming, "Carl, you're going to get us fucking in trouble." So the fish truck was after going out, a big tractor trailer, and he went too close to my hoop and he hooked his truck in the hoop, and my hoop was down across the middle of the road. So I'm savage. I'm like, F that truck, man. He went and broke my hoop. You know, my hoop was all flattened after falling down. So I had to get a car jack and I jacked it out and tried to make it all round again. So, but like that's
like the rim you had to blow
rim flattened, but all the pressure came down. So the rim was like this, like a cylinder. So then I had to car jack it out. So it was a little bit, you know what I mean? So like if I could shoot on those things, you shoot on anything. So that's kind of where, like, that's where I played. That's what I don't get. Now again, I'm in the business now and I'm trying to get a facility, and I just had this fancy facility, and I get all that. But like what you're doing on your own is what's going to make you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, just so that we can wrap this clip up, because I think this will be like a really good segment for these kids to listen to. I don't know, just kids, anyone in general, about perseverance. People will look at this and they'll say, okay, yeah, but because I mean, you know, you're a little bit older. People don't, the young kids, like, who's Carl English to these kids?
Yeah.
Like, they don't know that you went on to play for the national team for like 10 plus years, had one of the most storied careers in Europe, and was this close to the NBA. If the NBA was like it was today, you're in the NBA. So it's like, to be able to come from a situation like that. Now, if you look back, I'm sure on your own story, you're probably like, man, that's the reason why I am like I am. I had to be like that. Right. Yeah. But it's just, it's such a telltale sign that like you can really, there's no excuses. Like you can do anything you put your mind to if you really, really want to do it.
It depends on who you are as a person. Like, you know what I mean? Like I find, and I bet if I asked you this question off the record or on the record, I'd say, do you learn more from winning or from losing? I've learned everything from losing. I've learned everything from failure. I've learned everything from having nothing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have a dirt bike. I didn't have a pedal bike. I didn't have the fancy things that my kids have now. So my biggest battle is trying, you better appreciate what you got, because sometimes I wonder what their work ethic could be if they grew up like I did. That's what I always wonder, right? That's what I always try to figure out in the back of my head. That's what I always try to, as a parent, that's what I'm trying every day to make sure that they appreciate what's around them, and that nothing good in life comes easy. It's got to work for it. And that's a prime example. Like, you don't understand, like when I went to Hawaii, okay, everybody, first, once we made the tournament, it was like, I had that huge game and was MVP to WEC and all that. But I was the major story in CBS that year. I was the major story in that whole tournament, because now you have a kid who lost his parents, was orphaned at 5, right? So now they go and they send camera crews to Newfoundland, where I took you. And instantaneously they offered me a book and a movie. And I was very insecure. I was like, no, I'm, really humble. I was always taught to be hungry and humble. You know what I mean? And that's what they offered me, because they were like, how the hell did you come from there to get to here? You know? But to me, it was the path. And now looking back on it, it was the journey that made me who I am. I don't take anybody for granted. I don't care if you wear $1,000 suit or you have on a t-shirt or a pair of shorts. I don't judge anybody. I don't care where you come from. I care on how you are and how you treat people. And that's what I try to do. Like, we hit it off day one, not because anything else. We hit it off 2 reasons. You came down and willing to help me and wanted to work me out. But then I saw how passionate and how hungry you were. And that's why we hit it off. It was nothing else about anything else. And then once we got to know each other, we had so many things in common. You get what I'm saying? But it was like your hard work and dedication. And yes, everybody's rough around the edges. I'm rough. Put me in a business room right now. I'm rough as hell. Don't get me wrong. I'm rough. But you can't substitute my passion, my determination, and my hunger to be the best, right? And that's what I feel defines somebody.
Yeah, no question. No, man. I think I don't really have anything else to say to that, because I think you hit everything. Like, it's so, there's just, to touch back on what you were talking about with like access, and just to wrap it up, I guess, with like that story. I think the thing that I really struggle with nowadays, with helping these kids, and I mean, you're going through this with Ryder right now, it's like they have everything at their disposal.
Yeah.
How do you, as an athlete now, not get complacent and rest on your laurels? Because you know, you look at like it's if you look back at your journey, and I'm the same. Like, I would never be where I'm at now from a mentality standpoint, or trying to do the things I'm trying to do, if I was extremely gifted physically and I could have just coasted, and it never would have happened for me. It never would have happened for you. But it's like, how do you get these kids to really buy in to, I mean, for lack of a better term, having grit? Like, how do you do that? And that's like the telltale sign, right? It's like, or the question, how do you get these kids to not rest on their laurels, to really buy into old school principles, and to buy in? And that's like essentially why I want to do this, because I want people who have been there and have done it, and these kids, to hear these stories so that they can be like, wow, like I really need to do this, and I need to pick up my habits. Because the building of that foundation, not just from a skill standpoint, because basketball ends for all of us, but from a like habit standpoint, right? That's like the most important thing. And you're way better off. I mean, look at the guys that we had in the NBL. Look at these guys. A lot of these guys are coming from high major programs. If you come from a high major program and you're coming out of college at a high major Division I program and you end up in the NBL, I mean, no, it's a pro league and it's a good start for these guys, but you should be much higher. You should be going to second division Spain. You know what I'm saying? And with the majority of those guys, and again, I'm not here to put down the league or anything, or any pro league. Like, it's a great opportunity for guys to get their foot in the door. But you look at some of these dudes that we were around, I'm like, man, like, if you just would have bought in and had better habits from a young age, there is no way, like, your trajectory would be like this. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to your personal habits. Always. It doesn't matter what you do, right? So to be able to get these kids to buy in early.
How many times did we look at each other and say, there's nobody here shooting? There's nobody here getting extra shots on. You know,
buddy, I was the coach the year that I was the assistant with you in St. John's. I was the coach, and I was working out more than guys. I was working out with you. It was crazy. I'm looking around. I'm just like, how can you get to this point in your life with basketball and not absolutely love it? Why would you do it? You're not making enough money. I just don't understand.
And you're at that point where you have to understand, you always got to be honest with yourself too. You're at that point where you're a stepping stone. NBDL was the stepping stone for these guys. But if you're not working on your game and you're complacent already, there's not a chance for you. So now fast forward and be in Spain where I am, and you're the leading scorer and you're getting paid a shit ton of money. Well, guess what? Everyone's coming for you. Everyone's coming because they're trying to knock you off. Then I come back here and I go with Team Canada and I go back. But if I didn't put that work in every summer, when I got over there, well, there's 50 guys coming for my job. And if you think NBA is cutthroat, I love how people are like, oh, the NBA, that guy got to sit on the bench, and oh, he got traded. How did they do this player like that? And I'm just there sitting laughing. And
like, he's getting paid millions of dollars.
Getting paid millions of dollars. So how about look at a European player when they walk into the locker room and said, yeah, you're out of here. All right, you're not going to get paid, and you owe us money. If you try to come after us, we're gonna sue you. You're like, how can you do this? So like, it's hilarious the way the NBL and certain things are protected, or the NBA where guys are protected. And I'm like, okay, I truly believe if every rookie in the NBA went over to Europe, and I'm not talking the Barcelonas, the Madrids, I'm talking about mid-level Europe, and you did 1 year as a rookie in Europe and then went back to the NBA, I would go as far as saying their NBA career would 40% be longer.
No question. But man, so to touch on that, so my first year overseas, I play in Hungary, middle of the pack league. I play against, there was a guy named Darrell Summers. Darrell Summers played at Michigan State. So the year prior, he's in the Final Four. And he got, something, I don't know what happened. His career kind of just trickled off a bit, and he ended up in Hungary. Now he ended up with one of the top, better clubs in the league. I think they were Euro Cup or Euro Challenge. I can't remember. Anyways, I'm playing this guy, and I look at him, and it's day 29 of my contract. And I'm like, my contract is guaranteed after 30 days, and it's my first year. I'm so paranoid that I'm going to get cut at all times. I'm just like, man, okay. So I matched up against this guy, and I know, I'm like, yo, if I play this guy one-on-one, he beats me 11-3, or 11-2, no question. So I'm just like hyper paranoid the entire game. It just outworked him the entire, I have 29, he has 6. They cut him after the game. And I look at that example, and I'm like, dude, these guys don't understand. That guy, Darrell Summers, was projected as a first-round pick. And he goes over there, and then he rests on his laurels and gets lazy. As you start to climb the basketball pyramid, all that hype dissipates. Nobody cares anymore. It's what are you right now today in this given moment. So to touch on what you said there, Justin Holiday was in Hungary. Justin Holiday is now in the league. Rodney Magruder, I play Rodney Magruder. This is middle of the pack Europe, right? These guys are now journeyman NBA guys, but they're on rosters. Yeah. And what these people don't understand is the level of paranoia that good athletes have. Every day, you're so obsessed and fearful of failure that's what drives you every day, because the good ones, the ones that last. Yeah, man, those dudes, every day they're working like someone's coming for their lunch, right? The summer that I spent with Melo, and I'm with KD, and I'm looking at all these dudes, and Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell was the guy that impressed me the most, because this guy was working. He came in, he was on, he wasn't even on draft radar, and then he blows up. He comes these workouts. Chris Brickley posted. All of a sudden, he's now, he's the next thing. He's the hidden gem. And I look at a guy like that, and I saw from day one, when he walked in the gym, I didn't know who this kid was. I literally had no idea. And I watched one workout, and I just looked at Chris. I'm like, yo, that kid literally might be the rookie of the year. Yeah. You could just see the way that he worked, and he was so hungry, and he still was working like that. On the flip side, I won't name any names, but I saw dudes who are NBA All-Stars, or had been NBA All-Stars, or had been very high level players, guys with extreme talent. And then I look at their work habits, and it's no question in my mind that their work habits, why they dropped off, because their work habits are poor. They're not disciplined, and they don't have that hunger. Now I think that ties into kind of what you talked about before, from a mentality standpoint, of just really being passionate about it, being passionate about the process, and losing yourself in the process of becoming better, and falling in love with that, so that it becomes therapeutic for you. Because if you love basketball or anything for external validation, well, that's going to waver, right? Because when people are telling you you're the shit, well, now it falls off. Think about what you got already.
There, though, what you just said, and I was going to touch on that as you were talking. I put in the time and the effort overseas, but then I always had a supportive wife that was there with me, and I had family that were back home supportive. I get in the car, and I was never satisfied. I scored 30. I wanted to score 40. I get in the car, and my wife would know I'm upset, and I'd show it good. So, you can never be a good teammate. There's a certain way and a wrong way and a right way to act. So even though I had a bad game, if we won, I was happy. But what people didn't understand inside, if I had a bad game, I was potentially on the chopping block. Yeah. Or you're playing against a team that could pay you $1 million, so you wanted to ball out. So all these things, you were never satisfied. And when you're on the top, you're trying to stay there. When you're on the bottom, you're working your way up. So I get in the car, and I probably have 25, but after missing some easy ones. And I'd look over at her, and she'd look at me, and she's like, okay, no one's around, let it out. And I'd remember just grabbing the steering wheel and just shaking and screaming, and I'd be like, all right, I'm okay now. But you got to have that support staff there, but not always. I never had people around me that were always pumping me up. Oh, you're the shit. Oh, you're this. And even my first agents, the best agent I had was the guy that told me, you got to get your shit together. You're not worth that. You haven't done this, this, and this. You know what I mean? And then I start studying not only the game, but I start studying the market in Europe to see where my value was at. And then it became a point where I bought that passport. So I bought a a European, I was considered continual. So I bought an Ecuadorian Guinea passport. I don't know if we can use this or not. Or
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
right? It was in my book, I believe, so I don't think it matters. So
Yeah.
once I bought that passport, now I'm considered not an American no more. So now my money rose and my value rises all because of the passport. You know, like I got offered before I signed that 1 year with Victoria, 1+1, I actually signed with them in February with like a $4 million deal based on a Bulgarian passport. Then Pete Michael, who was probably one of the best Americans to ever come to Europe, went, and his passport became fake because somebody never got paid or something. So because his was not real, my passport didn't go through and avoided the contract. Wow. So like that changes my whole career because now I'm on one of the best EuroLeague teams. So then they just signed me for a 1+1, but I signed a 4-year or 3-year, $4 million deal. So that's how much those passports mean in Europe, right? Because you can only have 2 Americans, but you can have 5 continuals. Yeah. So now there's 10 teams, that's 50 jobs versus 20. So now there's typically 5 teams that can pay you. So that's 10 jobs. Whereas with those 5 teams with the passport, now there's 25 jobs. Yeah. So they usually keep their spots for the Americans because they want to try to grab an NBA guy or they want to try to grab, a big name or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, sell tickets and for sure.
But that really works there. But I think that's the biggest thing that you touched on is you're always paranoid and you're always pushing and you're always putting in that work if you really want it. If you don't want it, you're just wasting. I feel in the end of the day, you're just wasting your time. You're wasting everybody's time. And there was times like I'd be there the year I led the league in scoring with Estudiantes. We stopped getting paid in January. So like I look at these people in corporate America and I look at these people and even NBA guys, sometimes it's fucking hilarious to me. So they're there. I never got paid January, February, March, April, right? Then I received like a half payment. And at this point, I could have left. So Barcelona comes and Barcelona wants to buy me out. I wanted to be bought out, but I wanted a 2-year contract. So I wanted the security. They just wanted me for the rest of the season because they were in a bad place. So I said, no, I'll wait till the end of the season because I had like 5 teams that were willing to pay me big money, like $1 million contracts. So I was like, I got to just get through the season. I got to get just through the season. So now I'm getting paranoid, like don't get injured. You know what I mean? So I'm putting the work in, but I'm being cautious and I'm just doing everything right. And then I'm there. And so now I'm with Estudiantes. They haven't paid me. They stopped with the heat in the gym. They stopped the hot water in the showers. They stopped. There was no soap, no nothing. So like I was there and we had practice and my hands were fucking freezing, right? And I was getting agitated and I passed me the ball and hit my hands and I lost my mind. And I just started screaming at the coach. And the coach, great coach, one of my favorite. And he goes, Carl, I just asked you to pass the ball there. And I lost my mind. I said, it's not about the ball passing. I said, you expect me on Sunday to drop 30 points. I said, from Monday to Saturday, I can't feel my fucking hands. I was like, it's so cold in here. I said, I can't feel my hands. I said, as a shooter, I need to feel my hands and I need to get a good rhythm going up into the week. And he's like, okay, we'll talk to the president. So the president said, well, if we turn on the heat, the payments might be on time. And I looked at him, I said, well, I haven't got paid in 3 months. So the payments are on time. There's no heat. I said, what do you want me to do here? Right? Yeah, so like, that's what people don't understand. So you have these guys here in the league. Don't get me wrong. I watch it. I love it. Everything. But sometimes you're spoiled in the sense that, okay, there's real life outside of where you are, right? When you fly in on your private jets and you go to the best restaurants and you have the best hotels and you have people carrying your bags and stuff, that ain't real life, buddy. Like that ain't,
no.
What I mean? So,
but you really need to love it to like last through this European stuff. I mean, yeah, it's I mean, obviously I never got to the level that you got to, but it's crazy, man. Like not getting paid. I remember like our GM he just disappeared and he just like stole like 2 months of all of our salaries. And then the team, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Like you can't leave. Like that's what people say. Oh, why don't you go? Well, if you go home, they'll spin it so that you left the team. Yeah. You know what I mean? So then all the media reads, oh, Doug Plum quit and went home. But they don't read that Doug Plum hasn't got paid for 2 months.
Yeah, and then you can't say that as a player because you get blackballed.
Then you get blackballed.
And because the agents are tied in with the clubs for sure. And that just comes down to like resiliency. Like I look at right now, perfect example what's happening with COVID. These kids right now, they have every excuse in the book to not make it. It's never been harder to get a college scholarship than right now. These kids aren't even using eligibility. So it's like, yeah, sure, they can sit there and say, hey, man, I can't get in a gym. There's no scholarships available. It's like, no, there's always a way to figure it out if you really want it bad enough and you just persevere. And that's like one of the biggest things that I look at. Like, obviously, I'm sure you're the same for myself. Like, dude, my ability to persevere through bullshit is what's got to me where I've got to. Because ultimately, it's just your job ain't done until the job is done, man. And like, it doesn't matter what's happening around you. All you got to see is this. That's
what
it,
would
right?
you do? My question to you, because I know the same answer as me. What would you do if it was a COVID year? I'd be looking at it like, holy fuck, here's
opportunity.
I got all day to practice. I don't got to go to school. I'm in the gym. I'm outside playing all day. I'm working on my game. I'm putting on 10 pounds. Whereas people are like, oh, I can't get in the gym. I have no one to play against. I ain't never had anybody to play against. I'm going against my shadow. Like, I got you today. You know what I mean? And I'm like, again, the people that think that way, really, that's what I struggle with as a coach now, is if you think that way right now, what are you going to do when it really hits the fan?
Yeah, well, right now, like the tough are going to get tougher and the weak are going to get weaker for sure, more than ever. But you look at what COVID's doing to these kids. Like, if I was a young aspiring player right now, I'd be like, yo, this is amazing, because what's going to happen is the opportunities might be tough, but you know what's going to happen? Those dudes are not okay with being bored every single day and doing the same thing. And I'm going to come out of this year and I'm going to be a new player. Like, I'm going to be, and they're going to look at me and they're going to be like, yo, what did this guy do all summer? Exactly. And the reality is you're doing the same thing mostly every single day. It's boring, man. And it's just a perseverance and fortitude and like repetition for sure.
But it's repetition. Like, it ain't like, I used to take pride in getting in there and shooting to 500 shots. You know, like I never had. The first time I used one of those guns was in Hawaii, and I thought it was the best thing ever. So here I have a machine that's going to pass me the ball, and then I had it down to a science. If I use 3 balls, my arm would almost fall off, but in 42 minutes, I get up 555 shots. So then my goal was to keep that number high. So if I didn't get above 80% to 85%, because no one's guarding me, and that's on all my movements, all my things, and it's rapid fire, one after the other. So I had it down to a science. So then when I got home here, I think in my 2010, Newfoundland basketball got them and they allowed me to use them. And I'm like, I have this at my disposal. So then my shot just kept improving. Like every summer, like I was getting up, I come in before my workouts, I get up 700, anywhere from 500 to 700 shots makes per day. It had to be 500 makes. So that'd be kind of the mat on it. And then I'd play. But I'm like, every day I was getting up 500 shots, 5 days a week. I'd take the weekends and I just do certain cardio things. But that was my regimen. And then like my percentage is just, there's no way I still should even be able to shoot. I tore my AC clavicular, I tore my tricep, and I messed up my wrist with my clavicle. So all on my right hand, my shooting, there's no way I still should be. And then my percentages just went higher. You know what I mean? So it talks about, like you said, there's always a way, resilience, dedication, and commitment. And then the other one is just believing in yourself. Like I always try to tell kids, if you look down the bench and Buddy's doubting himself, how can you have faith in that guy? That kid is there like that, trying to get your eye contact. Like, I'm ready, coach, put me in. Like, I'm like, coach looks down at me. I'm like, right? Just like taking my shirt off, like ready to go. So you're the guys you want. You got to have that confidence. Now there's, you know what I mean? You have that confidence and belief. Like, I'm ready for that moment, right?
Yeah. And it's like a super fine line, right? Like doubt kills more dreams than, for myself, I look back at my journey and I'm like, man, like if I just would have been like figuring out that line, towing that line between confidence and arrogance at a young age, and it's such a fine line, because you don't want to be an asshole and you don't want people to think you're an egotistical prick, right? But you also need to have a next play mentality, and you have to understand that like people, if you don't believe in yourself, exactly like you said, like ain't nobody believing in you, man. Ain't nobody believing in you. People are just going to look at you and they're going to walk all over you.
But the old school guys, like you said, they don't want that little cocky kid. Who do you think you are? Like that hurt me with the Pacers. Rick Carlisle, I don't know if I told you this story, sat on the bench the whole game. 1 minute and 5 seconds left against Chicago. Arrogant as hell, Rick Carlisle was at that time, and called me up. said, hey, English, get in. I look at the score, go in. I was like, I'm ready. He goes, I want to see, drew up a play for me. He's like, I want to see if you can make a shot cold, and gives it like a little smirk type thing, right? Me being me, hits the first one, gets a steal, hits the second one, goes back to the bench, said, that good enough for you? It's a borderline though. Like, you know what I mean? I was probably not the right thing to say, but you're putting me in a situation to fail. And I wasn't failing. So they were trying to find ways. Now looking back, they were trying to find ways to, when we push them to the curb, here are the reasons why. And I wasn't about to give them no reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, the difference though is like you had put in so much work behind that. So like confidence without being the hardest worker in the room at all times, now you're delirious. You know what I mean? But if you know that you've maxed out and you've worked as hard as anybody else, you deserve that. So that's on the coach in that situation for sure, right? But like what most kids say is they'll say, oh man, my coach ain't letting me play. He didn't let me play my game. It's like, buddy, are you in the gym making it like it's not even up for debate how much harder you're working than everybody else, and letting the coach know that. Then that's where you'll get like a little bit of freedom, right? But like to go into a gym and say, oh, hey, man, let me shoot the shot, or let me get in, coach, or this guy's not letting me play my game. I'm like, unless you have made it, unless you've done absolutely everything you possibly can to be ready for that moment and be the hardest worker in the room and max out your days, truly like max out as much as you possibly can fit in, you have no right to even speak. But like for you, because if kids will listen to this and be like, oh man, like I could be like that, but they don't understand what you were putting in behind the scenes. So it's like, of course. Anyway, sorry, what were you saying?
My first year in Hawaii, I was a freshman. So coach didn't want to play freshmen, and probably the most important part of my development. So it was my first and my second year, because I redshirted my first year. And the reason I redshirted my first year was the ankle surgery. So after I played a couple of games, the assistant coach really wanted me to redshirt because he knew the head coach wasn't going to play me. So I was twisting my ankle a lot. So we opted for the surgery. And then I was on scout team. So you remember scout team back in the day? Scout. So you have the first team, then you have the second team. They're the main 10 that play. Then your next 5 with a couple of walk-ons were always the scout team. So I'd always be the best player on the other team. And I'm going at the first team, but I'm going at them. Like I'm going in there. Like we go down on the other end and we'd study Fresno State. So then I'm hearing, you know what I mean? Like I'm down on the side and coach is like, give me the scouting report. And he's like, if you want to pull that shot, you pull it. If you want to go one-on-one, you do it. So I'd always be that guy. So then my second year, when I was healthy and I was ready to go, I was still on the fucking scout team. So now I'm like, all right, I'm busting their ass. Like I'm destroying these kids. There was one day I hit 14 3-pointers in the scout team. And the coach said, if he hits another 3, you guys are running. And they're all coming, don't shoot it, don't shoot it. I'm like, wow, right? Like every one of you guys, I'm here to show that I'm ready. And he would not give me a shot. So I was in my mind, this is the part that gets to your story then. I'm preparing for what's next. It wasn't for Hawaii. I was getting ready to transfer. Where that would be, I don't know. But that's what I was working hard. And I was working harder than ever before because I was trying to prove my coach that I could play. I was trying to prove my teammates that I was good enough. And then I was preparing for the unknown. I was preparing for wherever I end up next, I'm coming in and this will never happen to me again. And then I was killing them so bad in practice. All the seniors went to the coach and told him to give me a chance. And then I finished the last 8 games of the year. I averaged 14 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds, right? As a freshman, but my numbers were low because I didn't play the last, 15 games. So then I took that into the tournament, into the WAC tournament. We went in as like a 7th or an 8th seed, and nobody knew who the hell I was, right? So we knocked off Fresno in the semi. And one of the best quotes I ever got was from Tarkanian. He said, he's like a young Jerry West. He's like, where the hell did this English guy come from? Right? But I was ready. So I didn't just have one good game. The whole tournament, I was like 15, 18. Then the tournament came and I scored 30 or 32. But I hit all the shots towards the end. Then I hit 6 of the 8 points in overtime. And we went and I got MVP. But my whole life changed at that moment. Right? But the last 2 months prior to that, I was transferring. I already made the contacts to transfer. I already had the motion started. I'm transferring. And I was preparing for something totally different. And then I finally got my shot. So you never know when that shot's coming, but you're always preparing so that when that time comes, you're ready. And that's all you can be. You got to be ready for that moment, because if you're not ready for that moment, you lose that opportunity, and that moment might never come again.
Yeah, which like ties back to that, just that element of paranoia. I think that like leads us into something that I wanted to talk to you about today when I reached out to you. Is so I seen the other day on Instagram that Mike James signed with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me the story about this guy. Obviously, like when you had been overseas at that point, you were like a trust source because you're not European, you're not an agent. You had been through the North American system. You had been a sniff away from the NBA, and you're still in that circle. So you were getting calls from people, GMs and coaches and scouts and all this stuff to basically tie in, or also on the European side of things about like who guys are, because you'll give an honest take as a player, someone who understands the whole spectrum. So maybe just tell the story a little bit about Mike James and just how it touches on you never know who's watching and how you always have to stay ready and what that's turned into for that guy. And just, I guess, your role in it.
But it's not just him. Like I remember when I was with the Edge, and I'd always say that to the guys. I was like, guys, you don't know, you know what I mean? And I could list off 20 guys, and it's hilarious. 2 weeks ago or a month ago, his name, remember Lewis was with us and was with a PEI, the jumper, what's his name? Lewis.
Oh, Marcus Lewis. Yeah.
Lewis. Forgot his first name for a second. I had a coach that coached me in Germany call me on Marcus. And I gave him the full spiel on Marcus, because Marcus just led the Switzerland league in scoring, had a real good year, and really turned the corner. I think those couple of years in the NBL, and then a couple of good years with PEI has really helped him. But anyway, I was recruiting, like I done recruiting on Nogueira, that was with Bebe, that was with the Raptors, Doncic, Fernandez, Luka, like Christoph Porzingis played with me in Sevilla. So like I'd have a lot of NBA GMs and stuff would contact me, and they'd always want the full scope. They can see like everybody else from the games, but they want to know how he is as a teammate. They want to know if they're partying, who's around them, what kind of lifestyle do they live, and the things that they can't see from watching the game, because anybody can put on a facade and show you what you want to see. So that's why I do a full 7, 8 page scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, where I felt they were in practice, what I, and my reputation kind of got out there as like, the guy to go to when they were looking at a player. So anyway, fast forward, I was in Greece and we were playing Kosovo, I want to say the name was light blue team. And we were going against Mike James, and we did our scouting report and whatever. And we were a better team, but we got matched up a fair bit. But going into the game, I had a call from my Spanish team. That was my coach when I was there. So this is Victoria. So this is a EuroLeague team. And they wanted me to take a look at him, said, you're playing him tonight. Let me know what you think. So my first response when I called him, I was like, he's pretty good, but I just gave him 32. So I was like, you need a shooter. I was like, you need a shooter. I'm trying to sell myself. So no, I was like, they were looking for more of a combo guard. So they wanted a point guard that could handle the pressure, but they needed a specific player that could change the tempo of the game when he came off the bench. So they wanted a high energy scoring guard, combo guard. And so I went through it, talked to him after the game, told him, there's guys, there's teammate, there's a team that's looking at you, and I broke him down. He was, at that point, he was incredibly explosive, played offense and defense. First step was crazy. For what is he, like 6 feet?
I don't even know, to be honest.
Incredibly athletic.
Yeah, he's definitely under 6'2".
Hold on, I don't want that cat to unplug the thing. So he was step back and incredible handles, change the speed, change the direction. I was very confused as to why he was on that team. So let's just paint the picture. I wanted to know more about him as a person and had a good conversation with him after him. Thought he was a great guy, just on, as a person, just from initial conversation. So I called.
Yeah, and that's usually where you get the biggest look at who someone is when they don't know. They have no idea. It's just the initial reaction. It's just like, are you kind? Are you polite? Are you respectful?
That's what I was going for, because there's that common bond between North Americans anyway, because you're in a foreign country. But a lot of times people just blow you off and go on with their teammate. But like he was he was asking me questions, because I was at that point, I was, I had a pretty good career, and I was telling him, you gotta understand where you are, and you gotta fit into your culture, so these teams will accept you. Cheapers. So these teams will accept you. So you kind of have to understand that. I always tell kids and guys that go over there, forget that you're American. Forget that this is not America. Forget that your fast food and all that bullshit you eat is not here. I said, immerse yourself in their culture with their people, because they have a lot of great things to offer. I said, when you do that, you'll have success. They'll welcome you, and your money and everything else will go through the roof, because you realize that you're not in the NBA. The minute you forget that you never made the NBA and you work, the closer you'll become to making the NBA again. And a lot of guys go over there and can't get past that. So I was explaining that to Mike. And then right after, I called my coach. He said, how did it go? And I told him, and I broke him down to him. The next day, they offered him a 2-year contract, and he left. So they bought him out. So you have to understand that he was probably making a couple of $1,000. And then he went to, probably 150, 200,000, 2-year contract per year. Then he signed huge. He played well with them. Then he signed a huge contract the next year. So big money. Then he went from there to Chelsea, went on to EuroLeague teams. Now, Mike did his part and done what he was supposed to do. But if I had to call that coach and said, yeah, no, he's not it, they would have went on to the next guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it goes back to what you're saying. You never know who's in that gym. You never know who's friends with who, and you never know who's watching you. You know what I mean? So every time you step on the floor, or every time you step into the gym, you got to be the best version of yourself. Even if you're having a bad day, leave that shit at home. Nobody cares about it. Check that in. When you step onto the floor, you're going to be the best teammate, the best player on the floor, and the hardest working guy. And not only win games all the time, and then if you're dealing with something personal, deal with it on your own time, because technically you're getting paid to do a job. And that's what I always approached when I was there. So one of the best compliments I've ever got from past players and past teammates and past coaches is they said how hard I practice. They said, you were always the hardest in practice. I hated to guard you in practice. You physically beat the shit out of me every day. And I would try to beat you mentally. I would try to beat you physically. And then I'd try to beat you on the scoreboard, because I wanted to see if you were as tough as me. And I wanted to know then as well that when the fourth quarter hit, are you someone I could depend on? And that's why I always judge my teammates, because I was always judging at that standpoint. When our backs are against the wall, is it who's my go-to now? Who's my Batman and Robin? Who are we going to figure out to pull this team through? And that's how I always looked at it. But getting back to him and some of these other guys is you don't know who's looking. And I've done that. Connor is a perfect example. I went off Connor because of what you told me. And I said, okay, Doug, the coach called me and I was with you. We were in Vegas, remember, scouting. And you were like, Carl, he's a great kid. You're like, are you serious? I'm like, coach just called me. I told him I'm going to get back to him. I acted like he called me. I acted like I was in a meeting because I didn't know Connor. You know what I mean? So I said, I'll call me, or I'll meet you at this bar in X number of minutes in like a half an hour. Then as soon as I got off the phone, me and you went into the room and you gave me the full scouting report, the full breakdown. And I tried to get an understanding so I wasn't like, shooting bullshit. And I took because I trusted you, I took your recommendation on Connor. Then I picked up the phone, or I met the Spanish coach. And that next day, they signed Connor. You know what I mean? If Connor doesn't get right, go ahead.
And now Connor's playing ACB, top division Spain in the world, just so these people understand the context. Connor was my rookie when I was at UBC, so he didn't even get an NCAA scholarship. Now he was a late developer, and obviously Connor is 6'8" with a 7'1" wingspan and could shoot the ball. But having said that, he was playing in New Zealand. Now there's nothing wrong with New Zealand. But now he's over there. He has a passport, just like you said. Everything's starting to work. But the thing about Connor is, like, Connor had that unwavering belief, and he stayed ready. It didn't matter to him, even though he was, by the time that he got to his fourth and his fifth year, he had really started to develop, and he was much better. Like you could have put Connor on Gonzaga at that point. That's how good he was, because he developed, right?
If you don't have that person there to vouch for you or give you that little plug,
no, for sure,
your whole trajectory could be different. Like he probably could have went to New Zealand and then Switzerland and be working your way to the ranks. Instead, you go straight to the ACB, and then you'll probably spend the next 10 years in the ACB, and your money will keep rising and your stock keeps rising. But if you never get that first shot, you could stay in these lower leg divisions and be working every day to, to prove your worth, right?
Yeah, and this isn't to like sit here and like pump up me and you, and this is just the way that. This is just the way that.
Mentioned that to Connor.
Yeah.
Nor did I mention it to Mike or anybody else. It's just
this is just the way that the world works, and these kids need to understand, and not just kids, like adults need to understand this. Like even in business, in anything that you're doing, you're always being evaluated, and someone is always watching. And the majority of people are haters, and the majority of people are looking for something to say something negative about you, because that's just the way that human nature is. So you have to be perfect, because even on your worst day, you could be having, like, just like you said, you could be having the worst day, man. And then you make that one impression. They might not remember you because you had an average day, but they will remember if you did something that was negative, or you brought negative attention to yourself, and then you put yourself in a box, and then you're screwed, right? So it comes down to ultimately, like, being good, being talented, working hard, excelling at your craft on the court. That's the price of admission. That's expected. That just gets you in the door.
That gets you there.
What really separates you? Yeah, what really separates you is your personal habits and who you are as an individual. That's it.
And that's what they'll remember. And then, like, I went to Bilbao on just basically as a practice player to go over and get in shape. This was later on in my career to get in shape. And I went there to end up signing me for 6 weeks or 2 months. Then from that contract, I signed with Tenerife. And then from that contract, they went and signed me to the rest of the season. So like, it's all about, you get there, you make your impression. I went with Olympiacos, the same type of thing, but I came back with the edge. So I went with Olympiacos just basically to train and get in shape. They end up offering me a $500,000 contract, but then the American blows out his knee and they needed a big man. And I was to the point where the stuff was going on with my brother at home and needed a kidney transplant. And I was kind of I wanted to play for the edge, but I was using all this for leverage. And I wanted to get in shape because I knew I couldn't get in shape home here because everybody was always training with you guys and stuff. So it was all a master plan, but like, it's all about opportunity. It's all about where you at. And when that opportunity strikes, are you ready? How many guys are in that situation that are not ready? I mean, when I was with the Raptors, I did that training camp with the Raptors, mini camp in the summer. I talked to my agent at the time and he said, who's standing out? They sent him my stats. I shot 19 for 22. I was playing combo guard. And I said, I'm destroying, but I said, there's one more kid here that's I don't know who he is. I don't know where he comes from. I said, he can't play basketball, but he's jumping at the gym. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, every time we get water, he jumps from the free throw line or windmills from the free throw line. And I said, every time he does it, 18 people on the sideline almost fall out of their chairs. And he said, what's his name? I said, he's Jamario Moon. He said, okay, yeah, he's an athletic guy from the D League. Sure enough, it was between me and Jamario, and they gave him $60,000 or $80,000 to come to camp. If they had to give me that, I would have went to camp. So instead, I went back overseas, and he played 5-6 years in the NBA, all because he was athletic and jumped from the free throw line at every water break. Sometimes it's all about opportunity, man. And sometimes it's showing your strengths and showing what you can do. And that could be, look at the guys that are in the league just on defense, just being on hella defensive players, the Patrick Beverleys of the world, Tristan Thompsons. And I mean, look at Draymond. I know they can do other things, but they got into the league on doing one or two things better than anybody else.
Yeah. I think there's two takeaways there. It's like, one, okay, yeah, for you with where you've been at that point in your career, like it would be so easy for you to be bitter and to become jaded about being looked over for people that maybe you thought, okay, like if you actually you trim the fat and you look at straight goods here, the meat of the product, like I'm a more seasoned, ready product than what this person is. So you could have become jaded and rest on your laurels. Instead, you become just as hungry, which ties back to you loving the process and just doing this. But at the same time, on the Jamario side of things, it's like, you don't apologize for how you get opportunities. You take them as they come, but you better be ready when that opportunity comes, because they ain't coming twice. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And he took the bull by the horns. I give him credit. We end up playing each other again in Puerto Rico 8-10 years later. But like, you know, he worked his way through there off his athleticism, and I give him credit for that, you know.
Funny enough, my point guard last year in London is actually his I think it's his nephew or his cousin or something. Xavier Moon is Jamario Moon's nephew.
He's playing well now too.
Yeah, he's over in Israel.
Hold on, tornadoes are coming. Hey, bud. How was your day? Good. My dad's going to finish up this podcast, okay? So keep it down for a minute, all right?
We'll be quick, man. I think this is really good. And
I knew when we start talking, we were going to need more than a half an hour, dog. Like I dominate these podcasts.
I want this one to be a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like everyone kind of knows your story a little bit and we'll touch on it and stuff, but like, it's not even about that. It's about like the things that you've learned and being able to push it into mentality serious for these kids so they can hopefully take something from it. Let's get into stories. Actually, you know what? One guy I want you to talk about, just who I think really embodies. And again, this is because this guy's playing in Europe. He's a white guy. I don't want this to think like this is some prejudice thing, but like I look at a guy like Kevin Pangos. Like Kevin trained with Kyle when he was young, and Kevin Pangos. I remember I'm 15. Kevin's 15 or 16 years old. This is the first time that I met Kyle. I'm at UBC. We go out to play Guelph, Waterloo, Laurier, all these teams in Ontario. We play. Kyle had this thing called A-game hoops at the time, and he had all these pros, and then he had like young rising players that he would, let train with the guys in the preseason. Yeah. We had a guy named Josh White, who was the player of the year in U Sport. Josh was good. He scored 30 on NCAA teams in those games we played early in the year. We had another guard named Alex Murphy, who was a fifth-year guy, very good, was all conference. He has to guard this 16-year-old kid. This kid literally looks like he just came out of math club.
Yeah.
Kevin Pangos absolutely put the smack down on these old guys. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, yo, he literally looks like he's straight up out of a math club. Like he looked like and the kid was about 6'1". But everything that he did, he could pass with both hands. He had worked himself to become a good athlete, a deceptively good athlete in terms of changing direction and stuff and being strong. He could shoot it. He could pass both hands. He was very intelligent. He was like a fierce competitor. And now you look at Pangos, like he was playing for Real Madrid. He's like a sniff away from the NBA, just like kind of you were, but he has a label to him. But I look at him and I know obviously you've crossed paths. And when you look at someone like that, what do you think that kids can take from a guy like that? Or what are your thoughts on him?
Well, he's the same type of kid. So I've been mentoring Kevin, I would say, for years now, especially he came in there young with Team Canada and then on selections, but then more so once he got to the European stage and played in played in Gran Canaria where I played, so helped him out on that one. Then he went to Zalgiris, which was, a big move for him in EuroLeague standpoint. Then he, with the Barcelona deal, same type thing, but he was at the point where same thing I struggle with. Do I come back and try the NBA and forget the European stuff? And my advice to him at the time was, you can't turn down a Barcelona because Barcelona will be 10 to 12 NBA teams. And I said, Barcelona solidifies your whole career. After you play in Barcelona, you can play anywhere. And not only will you be able to play anywhere, you'll also have the money in your bank account that gives you the freedom to play anywhere. So after that contract, if you want to go now and try the NBA, go and do it. Because a lot of times guys like him and myself and let's say Kyle Wilshire and these guys, if they leave Europe now and come back like I would have, you would literally take a pay cut. So once it gets to that level, it's not about the money, it's about the fact of the opportunity. So if you come back and try and you get cut, you give up all your opportunities that you have in Europe because they're not going to wait for you. They're not going to
those contracts are already gone.
Those contracts are gone. So now you're into October, NBA preseason. Now you're into November. So you missed August, September, October, November. So you missed 4 months of money, plus all those opportunities are gone. So where are you going to end up? And that was always my biggest fear of why I didn't do it. But that being said, it was always my biggest regret. So we've talked many times on the fact that if he doesn't try, it will haunt you like it's haunting me. It's been my biggest regret my whole career, not going back, trying the NBA when I was good enough to make it. And I said, once you solidify yourself in Europe and you have that foundation, you can go back to Europe at any time because you now are Kevin Pangos. You are a pass first point guard. You can shoot the three and you do not make mistakes or turn the ball over. Also, you're a quality, you're a human being. you have a family, and you don't party. And all those things, they love. They love when you have a family. They love when you don't like to, when you live and die for basketball, because they know then they don't have to worry about you. Because a lot of times in Europe, the best teams are in the best cities. When I say best cities, it's the best nightlife, it's the best food, it's the most entertainment. So a lot of times you can come over there and get caught up, because Europe is pretty wild. It's a hell of a party when you get after it. So they want the guys that are just focused on basketball. So Kevin, to me, is the epitome of hard work, dedication, because again, he reminds me of Steve Nash, but just to what he done as a kid to get to where he was, how he studies the game. And he's not super athletic. I don't even know if he can touch the rim, can he? So, he's not super athletic, but yet he can control the game off his mind. He can control the game off his speed and change the directions. And he's got huge cojones, he's always ready to make that big shot. So yeah. I got nothing but utmost respect for him. And I've also mentored him with Team Canada stuff, with insurances and things, and just a bunch of different things. So to me, he's had a hell of a career. I don't think it's over yet. He was just co-MVP EuroLeague with Zenit last week.
Yeah. So he is. Yeah, I look at him as just like, more kids need to look at guys like this. And, it's not NBA or bust. Like someone like that, like he is maxed out, and he's a great role model. There's the Jamal Murrays, there's the RJs, but like there's also Kevin Pangos, and Kevin Pangos is like a massive success story of like that guy has absolutely maxed out. And I think that, from this probably, more kids are going to look up Kevin Pangos.
The true hoopers that understand, or the coaches and things, they understand the European careers. Like Jay Triano had one of the nicest comments about me as well. He said, outside of Steve, he said, you probably have the best basketball career. That the shame is, he said, a lot of people don't even understand that you've had. And that to me is a great compliment, because he understood the things I've accomplished on the European stage. And a lot of times it doesn't go unnoticed, because guys will go and they'll sit on the NBA bench, they'll have a role here. But when you go and you dominate Europe for a really long time, and you continue to play at the highest levels over there and play for your country, like all those things make you up. It's true what you said. It's not NBA or bust. My first couple of years, that's what I thought, NBA or bust. And until I realized and settled in, that's when the NBA opportunities came back. But it's tough as a player too, because that's what you grow up dreaming to be your whole life, right?
Yeah, no question. But I mean, look at you now, dude. You came from a town of 20 people in a shack with a minus your hairline, but you had a makeshift you had a makeshift basketball hoop on the side of the Atlantic Ocean. And now, I mean, I've been to your house. You have a basketball court in your house, and you have a beautiful family and all, because you've used the game in a way, but you respected the game, but you used the game to elevate yourself, because you respect that you did it the right way. And all that was built off of the game, and what you put into the game from a habit standpoint. So I think that it's a story that people need to hear. That's why I wanted to do this, so people know who the hell Carl English is. Yeah, man, I think I already have. Like, you got anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, just I appreciate everything you're doing there. I appreciate everything you've done for me when you came here, and just growing the game across the country. I think, again, it's kind of similar to when you go to Europe. I think a lot of times Canadians are just so obsessed with getting to the States, because that's where all the opportunity is for young coaches, whether it's training NBA guys or training college guys, or a college job or an NBA job. A lot of times it's at home, the guys that are building across our country, that goes unnoticed. So from my standpoint, I'd like to thank you for everything you do out on the West Coast, and everything you did for me when you were here on the island.
Appreciate you, big dog. I got to get back out there to the Rock. We'll do a camp or something when COVID ends.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, brother. I will cut this, and I'll watch it tomorrow. Probably I got to do some web stuff today, and then I'll. Can you just send me your logos, like your PNG files, and then I can make up like some videos and some covers and stuff, so you can repost it.
Yeah, I'll send them to you now.
Cool. All right, brother.
Good chat.
Good to catch up, man. See ya.
See you, buddy. Later.
Two and one. stay calm. Thanks for coming out, guys. Defend the rock. Got 37, boys. Got 37.